no particular anxiety. I think everybody felt, well, the ship wouldn't sink, you know.
There was a bunch of religious sect people aboard. They were singing Nearer, My God, to Thee, and that didn't help the situation any. See, they must have, that was something that was done on the Titanic when that sank.
But at this one particular moment, I was just as calm as could be. I figured, well, if this is the end, I'm ready.
And the children, no water, Mommy, no in the water, Mommy, we want not to go in the water.
I'm James Whitmore. The people you have just seen lived through one of the greatest sea disasters of our time. You are about to see the story of the Andrea Doria, her collision with the liner Stockholm, and of those who survived. This is a story of survival. June 1951. In the Ansaldo shipyards near Genoa, Italy, a great new luxury liner is nearing completion. Designed to be Italy's first post-war bid for a share in the valuable transatlantic passenger traffic, she is almost 700 feet long and will have a cruising speed of 23 knots, placing her among the largest and fastest of the world's liners. After more than 2 years on the ways, she is finally ready to take to the water. A nation shattered by war focuses its attention on this great ship, a ship which will carry to the faraway ports of the world the flag of a people now stirring in a new renaissance. As Archbishop Siri of Genoa gives her a blessing, Signora de Gasperi, wife of Italy's premier, christens her Andrea Doria. Other ships plying the Atlantic may be larger or faster, but none can claim to be more beautiful. In her murals are reflected the painting and sculpture of the great Italian masters. Dominating the first-class lounge is a bronze statue of her distinguished namesake, Andrea Doria, a famed 16th century admiral and soldier of fortune. December 1952. The Doria moves out for her first sea trials. She now comes under the critical gaze of the Italian maritime authorities. The hull is divided into 11 watertight compartments. Any two can flood without endangering the ship. In addition, she is fireproof and carries lifeboats for 2,000 people. Dominating her superstructure, radar, sweeping a safe course through the heaviest weather or the blackest night. A great ship is more than a thing of steel and paneled wood. A great ship has a soul, has life, breathed into her by the painstaking artisans who make her a thing of beauty unique in all the world. Such a ship is the Andrea Doria. The Doria proves herself a lady, as efficient as she is beautiful. And she is accepted for service with a salute. January 25th, 1953, the Andrea Doria, shrouded in fog, enters New York Harbor at the end of her maiden crossing. The traditional escort of tugs and fireboats gives the queen of the Italian merchant fleet a royal welcome. Blasé New Yorkers take her to heart. More than 20,000 of them will line the pier during this first visit. In command, Captain Piero Calamai, member of a distinguished seafaring family, himself a veteran of 37 years at sea.
I was very happy to be back in New York. And hello, New York, eh?
July 17th, 1956, the Andrea Doria leaves Naples for New York on her 51st transatlantic crossing. The weather's clear, and to her 1,134 passengers, it looks like the beginning of a 9-day holiday. Night works a special kind of magic on a great liner like the Doria, and few can resist the evening's round of activities. For many, bedtime comes late. For some, each day begins with services in the ship's small but ornate chapel. For those who worship the sun, too, the Doria has much to offer, and the warm July weather draws the passengers out on deck. As the Italian Lines brochure says, she must be a whole way of life for her passengers. She must provide them with an experience that will somehow be different and better than a comparable experience they could have anywhere else. It must be one they will never forget, as long as they live.
The captain gave cocktail parties and dances and costume parties and good food, wonderful food, and very comfortable. It was a very lovely ship.
For 8 days, the graceful ship has entertained her guests with parties and games, dining and dancing. Now, July 25th, the last day before reaching New York, the pace changes. It's a time to rest and relax, a time to come to grips with the idea that the holiday is almost over. For some, the end of the voyage means coming home. For others, it means that their dream of life in the new world is about to come true. Shortly before noon on this same day, 2 other ships are just beginning voyages. Leading the way out into New York Harbor for the crossing to Europe is the seasoned veteran of the French line, the 30-year-old Ile-de-France. Following close behind, the Swedish liner Stockholm. The Stockholm is smaller and slower than many of her competitors in the Atlantic trade, but she is a sturdy ship. Her yacht-like bow is heavily reinforced to withstand the ice of the North Atlantic, and her popularity is ensured by the warm friendliness and excellent service of her Scandinavian crew. The Doria has, since 2:40 in the afternoon, been running in a heavy fog. Although the ship's speed has been cut only slightly, Captain Calamai has ordered the usual precautions taken. The liner's watertight doors have been closed, and her foghorn, which can be heard for 4 miles, sounds a blast every 100 seconds.
The fog is so terrible that we are in big danger. He said, what you speak? We are not in danger. The horn is not blowing. When we are in danger, the horn will blow. In this moment, we heard the horn. Then he said, you are right, Mrs. Schönbaum. We are in danger.
On the last night out, everything is relaxed and informal. With the captain's dinner behind them, shipboard acquaintances spend a last leisurely evening saying their farewell. Even the dancing this last evening is subdued, and the orchestra sets a mood of nostalgia with the sentimental and frequently played Arrivederci Roma. At 10:40, the Andrea Doria's radar picks up a blip. Since the Doria has passed the Nantucket lightship 20 minutes earlier, this one is identified as a moving ship. It is 17 miles away. On the Stockholm, 3rd Officer Karstens has the bridge duty until midnight. Running at her top speed of 18 knots, the Stockholm is in clear weather, although fog has been reported out beyond the Nantucket lightship, still 22 miles ahead. At 10:48, the Stockholm's radar picks up a blip. It is identified as an approaching ship, and its position is fixed at 12 miles and slightly to the right. At 11 o'clock, the radar puts it at 6 miles. By 11:03, 4 miles and closing fast. Two minutes later, at 11:05, Captain Calamai on the bridge of the Doria fixes the approaching ship on his radar at 5 miles. 2 of his officers disagree, insist that the oncoming ship is 3.5 miles away. Calamai orders a slight turn to the left, 4 degrees, to widen the space for a right-to-right passing. 11:06. The Stockholm, still running in the clear, sights lights for the first time on her left side. Her radar puts the ship they belong to at less than 2 miles now. Karstens orders a 20-degree turn to the right to conform with a left-to-left passing. Just as the liner turns into her new course, Karstens is momentarily interrupted and turns away to answer a telephone call. Minutes later, the officers of the Doria are horrified to see an oncoming ship loom up through a break in the fog. Captain Calamai orders all left and sounds 2 sharp blasts on his whistle. The warning signal for an emergency left turn, but the speeding ship skids ahead a half mile before starting to react. On the Stockholm, Karstens returns from his telephone call. Ahead of him, like a nightmare vision, the lights of the ship he had seen to port appear to have swung all the way around. In desperation, the Swedish officer orders a hard turn to the right and full speed astern, but the fatal course is set. Seconds of the first SOS, ships all over the area are now heard answering the distress call. The messages are also received by the Coast Guard's Rescue Center in New York City. The crash position is immediately plotted and the ships are identified as the Stockholm and the Andrea Doria. From ports along the eastern seaboard, Coast Guard cutters race to the scene. With nearly 2,500 lives in immediate peril, the largest peacetime sea rescue in history is underway.
This is John Tillman speaking from the plane Miss Daily News. We're en route to cover the collision between the Italian liner Andrea Doria and the Swedish ship Stockholm, which occurred last night some 45 miles southeast of Nantucket. As we circle, certainly is a sorry sight, a very sad sight indeed, to see the pride of the Italian fleet, the luxury liner, the 29,000-ton Andrea Doria, wallowing here in the Atlantic Ocean.
Only minutes after the collision, it was apparent that the listing Andrea Doria was in serious danger of sinking. Her list was so severe that none of her portside lifeboats could be launched. Although 40 feet of the Stockholm's bow has been ripped away in the collision, she remains seaworthy, and many of her lifeboats brought the first Doria survivors aboard. Of the 545 she's picked up, half are Doria crew members, a fact which will be the subject of much controversy. With the assistance of other ships which raced to the scene, among them the Cape Ann, the Ile-de-France, the private William H. Thomas, and the Robert E. Hopkins, all known survivors have been removed from the ship during the night. Of the several ships which raced to the disaster scene, perhaps none cheered the Doria's stricken passengers more than the Ile-de-France, which arrived with her sign and floodlights gleaming across the water. Now, as she returns to New York with 758 survivors aboard, she messages, "All passengers rescued, proceeding to New York full speed." Since 5:30 in the morning, when Captain Calamai reluctantly became the last man to leave the Doria, she has drifted alone in the water. Now Captain Calamai and a few of his crew wait anxiously in a nearby lifeboat for tugs to arrive. Their last hope is that the ship can be towed to shallow water, where if she sinks, she may at least be salvaged. At 7:40, U.S. Army and Coast Guard helicopters arrive and begin lifting the critically injured from the Stockholm's afterdeck.
American helicopters came from shore and stood right above our deck and lowered what is called a basket for the wounded. First little girl that was put on, she was badly wounded. Then there were 3 helicopters altogether picking up wounded from the deck. And it was a wonderful sight to see what Uncle Sam will do in case of tragedy.
Among the 5 they pick up, one is a little girl with severe brain damage, suffered when her father dropped her into a lifeboat. She will later die in a Boston hospital, only hours after her distraught parents managed to find her again. By 9:45, towing the Doria is out of the question.
About 10:30 or 11 o'clock, she did her last death dive. And all the crew from the Andrea Doria were watching this from the deck of the Stockholm, tears in their eyes. It was a dramatic thing. Something you will never forget. They loved their Andrea Doria.
At 10:09, her bow slips beneath the water, and the ship many called the most beautiful in the world plunges to her death at the bottom of the Atlantic. The Andrea Doria was due to arrive at Pier 84 at 9 a.m. For many, a long vigil is about to begin. The first survivors reach New York on the Ile-de-France. For the next 18 hours, they pour in on the 4 other rescue ships. Last to arrive is the crippled Stockholm. One little girl, scooped from her bed on the Doria by the Stockholm's bow, was carried back with it, and somehow, in this twisted wreckage, survived. Many are reported missing. And now, as the Stockholm brings in the last of the survivors, everyone waiting here knows that unless their loved ones are in this group, they won't be coming back. Among the anxious crowd on the pier is film actress Ruth Roman. Rescued earlier by the Ile-de-France and separated in the confusion from her little boy, she has had no word of it. As the returning survivors begin to tell their stories, there is much apparent disagreement and confusion as to what actually occurred.
When it collided,
Yes, it's very loud.
did they immediately give the danger signal? What happened right after the collision?
Panic.
There was a despicable display of cowardice on the part of the complete personnel of the Andrea Doria from the captain down.
I am very much satisfied. The crew's done a very good job. Otherwise, there would have been more casualties and more deaths if it wasn't for them.
I could sing you a song or write you a book about him. We never saw an officer in the 4 hours we were there. We never heard one single solitary word from the bridge.
Nothing was organized at all.
We never saw, to use bad English, we never saw nothing. After dinner, we had gone to the bar to have a drink, and while sitting there, we remarked about the fact that there weren't any fog blasts, but thought that if radar was working, perhaps it might not be necessary.
He said he was just waiting. He was doing nothing on deck. Was he afraid? Avevi paura? No. He wasn't scared.
None. I couldn't begin to tell you this. I'm just too upset about the thing.
Oh, I won't say anything. I will not say anything.
I don't know. I just I jump on water. I don't know for myself.
I am British, but I come from Malta, the island of Malta, and I married Professor Pick on the 18th of April, and I had all my belongings. I was a happy bride, ready to set up my home with all my belongings. I had beautiful clothes, beautiful family jewelry, beautiful silver. I am destitute. I'm in this, and I've got nothing else, not even a handbag. I've lost all my documents and everything. I've got my husband. That's all. I hope America will welcome me and help me. That's all I can think, because physically and morally I'm wrecked.
Good luck, madam.
No, I see my baby in the water. I jump on the ship. I take it off all. I jump on the ship. I go take my baby in the water 2 times. Take my baby in the water. I swim. All I go on a boat.
We was just going to bed, and I had my pajamas on, and the crash came. When it knocked me down, I got my pair of pants, and I said, Mother, come on, let's go.
The crew of the Andrea Doria couldn't even help on the Stockholm until a few of us women got clearing the dishes and helped wiping dishes in the kitchen. We sort of embarrassed them, and after this, they buckled down and helped out.
This little fella said that, don't worry, Pop, I can swim. Everything went smoothly, and I know he told me before that he praised the seamen in saving this boy's life here, the little one.
Finally, the 2 captains meet the reporters. Nordenson of the Stockholm, with some help from his company's lawyers, is first.
Just after the collision, did you check your radar, sir?
No.
Well, Captain, you know whether it was operating? Right,
gentlemen, no, I can't answer that.
The type I've asked you to stay away from.
Yeah.
I don't think you ought to ask questions which relate to those matters.
Captain, what in your opinion was the cause of this accident?
Now wait a minute, gentlemen, don't go into conclusions of the Andrea Doria's conduct or whatever.
No, gentlemen, this is not the maritime hearing.
We have been helped with brilliance by the United States Army, Navy, and Coast Guard ships by the Ile-de-France, the Stockholm, and the Cape Ann. The successful rescue was made possible because of the discipline and calm of the passenger and the sense of duty of my officer and crew.
Captain Calamai summed up his loss in one bitter sentence. When I was a boy, and all my life, I loved the sea. Now I hate it. Longitude 6950 west, latitude 4029 north, 225 feet below the surface of the Atlantic. This is the final resting place of the Andrea Doria. Of the 1,706 passengers and crew of the Andrea Doria, 46 died, most of them killed in the collision itself. In addition, 5 of the Stockholm's crewmen lost their lives. With the Doria's logbooks at the bottom of the ocean and with the contradictory testimony given by the officers of both ships, much of the investigation which followed the accident was inconclusive. Whether it was caused by faulty radar or the misinterpretation of it was never established. The case never went to court. The Andrea Doria, a thing of beauty, unique in all the world, and lost to the world forever. Silent witness to the frailty of man, to the imperfection of his inventions, but witness also to man's invincible will to survive.